And every time I look at his Facebook, I said, I can't give him a message now. So I text message instead of Facebook message. Thank you for the historic information. Actually, I don't have anything to add after this valued information. I started with the laugh because I felt that my heart and chest really getting tight after what I heard about Syria. He said, or I will quote Dr. Osama, that we are not even to dream to bring an Arab regime down. But being here today, I would like to quote Malcolm X. Actually, it is a quote that I love. He said, no justice, no peace. And another quote, he said, you don't have a peaceful revolution. You don't have a turn the other cheek revolution. There is no such a thing as a non-violent revolution. Revolution is a bloody revolution, is a hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. How can you relate whatever you said now to Malcolm X? And how do you see the future of Syria? And does really freedom deserve all this destruction and tearing houses on their tenants and all what you see every day, blood, 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 blood? So could you please try to, thank you.
You know, I'll tell you from my own experience. You know, I was raised as a typical Arab in a household where the father was one of the leaders of the opposition in Jordan. But when he got married, when he saw his sons and daughters are growing before his own eyes, he shifted gears. He wanted to change the direction of his life, because you cannot keep a job if you're opposing the government. Not the king in Jordan. You can't talk about the king. He's untouchable. Okay? So he wanted to change his way of life. And I remember, you know, in the early 90s, when I, you know, entered that age, 18, I became politically active. And I wanted freedom. So I demonstrated against some practices of our government, the policies of our government, not the king himself. Remember, no one can talk about the king in Jordan. And I remember one day going back home and being beaten up by my father because I demonstrated. And I remember him telling me, because of you, I'm going to lose my job, because he will be kicked out from his government job. Now, in 1994, I also demonstrated when I was studying in Morocco. I came back in the summer back to Jordan during the vacation, and I also demonstrated. And still, I remember my father beating me up. Of course, there is no child protection there, so you don't have to worry about your children being taken away from you. Okay, he beat me up again because I demonstrated. And I remember telling him, it is because of your generation we're being subjugated today. Now, when I look at the situation today, I say it is past due for us to get to this point to demonstrate and to demand change and to bring down failed regimes. Now, we're not going to beat our children who are going and demonstrating in the streets. Actually, we cannot beat them and we cannot stop them because our generation is different. And I will say, if the revolution did not start in Syria today, though I'm not sure if it will succeed eventually, we would have had to start it in maybe in another 10, 15 years from now. So all what we're doing is we're postponing the task. All what we're doing is that we're passing down the challenge and the destruction to another generation for our generation to live in peace. That's all what we're doing. As the generation of my father passed down this task to us. So that's all what's happening. Because these regimes are not changing. This regime will not change. And this regime will continue to suppress the people. And under these regimes, we have no future. So look at our situation. Look at the 18 and 20 and 25 years old who have no jobs. Look at the person who's over 40 and cannot get married, cannot have a house, cannot have children. So where do you want them to go? So again, we're passing down the task to another generation. That's all what we're doing. No one hates to, change a regime through elections, like what we have here in the United States. No one will hate to do that. Why would you go and be killed, get arrested, just to bring down a regime or change a regime? Because there is no other way for us. So I would say, yes, it is worth it for us to start this, and it is worth it for the Syrian people, because this would have happened no matter what, whether today or tomorrow or another year or 10 years from now, it will have happened again. Because the Syrian regime, the man who's preparing his son, who's about maybe 10 years old, or I think about 13 years old now, Hafiz, he's preparing him to become another president. And how do you think he's going to rule his people? Do you expect him to be Jefferson? Or to advance Jeffersonian democracy? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it. And the victims shouldn't be blamed for demanding his freedom. It is the butcher who's killing and the butcher who's destroying who should be blamed for destroying Syria. That's the real issue here, is that we're blaming the victims because they dared. And I'm telling you, because I keep hearing this every time I go and visit Jordan. My brother-in-law every time tells me, Osama, we know that we live under a corrupt regime. We know that it is not the life that we aspire. We know that we have no dignity, but at least we have stability. So if they want to take 15, 20% bribe from what we make, that's fine. If they want to imprison us for speaking out, that's fine, as long as they don't kill us. So we got into that mentality where we accepted this victimization, that we're victims, we should continue to live as victims, or to be treated as sheep or chickens. That's how we're being treated. Is this the kind of life that we are aspiring? Or is this the kind of life that you can maintain? Because again, remember, it wasn't the Brotherhood, nor it was the liberals, nor it was the leftists who initiated these revolutions. It was the average citizens, young citizens in our countries, because they see no future. So I'll say, yes, it is worth it, because it would have happened no matter what, even in the near future.
Hello, everyone. First of all, one of the reasons I focus on Syria is, since I was a child, I learned that some very important events will happen in the Middle East. So I try to set my alarm around 1:30 a.m. and just listen to Al Jazeera about the Middle East. So a few points. Since the war started, I was just wondering, is it a Sunni and a Shia war? So if it is a Sunni and a Shia war, we all know that the West is against Sharia, especially the United States of America. Countries that try to implement Sharia, we know what happened to them. There were economic sanctions and many other things. Just today before coming here, I was chatting with one classmate outside this door, and she was telling me that, okay, I don't understand about Sharia because I was just reading in the internet where countries that they implement Sharia, they shoot girls on the head when they try to go to school. And just in Minnesota, going to different mosques, I just, sometimes just get up and visit different mosques. These are Sunni places. Each mosque says they are Sunni, but all of them have different opinions. One will say that I wouldn't pray in that mosque because the imam doesn't leave their beard long. Another one will say, I wouldn't pray in that mosque because they have this opinion. And these are all Sunnis. So in Syria, since these Sunnis are fighting against the Shia, and the Sunnis themselves, they are not one. So how can they achieve victory?
I don't think it started because of a Sunni Shi'i thing. Because even the Alawites weren't recognized as a Shi'i sect by the mainstream Shi'ism until 1980, around that time when Khomeini recognized the Alawites as a Shi'i sect because Syria under Hafez al-Assad sided with Iran against Iraq. And what is ironic, Iraq was ruled by a second branch or another branch of the Ba'ath Party. They come from the same ideology, the Iraq and Syria, but they were competing. And Syria and the Ba'ath ideology is a pan-Arabist. Yet they sided, the Syrian regime, the Alawites sided with the Iranians, and the Iranians, which represent the mainstream Shi'i sect, which is called the Ithna Ashriya, the 12 Imams, they recognize Syria and the Alawites as a legitimate Shi'i sect. Now, when the revolution started, it wasn't against the Alawites because there are so many Alawites who are part of the revolution. There are so many Alawites who hate the Assad family and other families that are allied with it, like the Makhlouf family, who have a monopoly over the Syrian economy. And they are Alawites too, but the majority of Alawites are being ruled by fear. They're not being ruled by consent, by the Assad family and its allies. So we need to keep this in mind. It's not between Sunnis and Shi'is. It became down the road a defining line between Sunnis and Shi'is, down the road. Because when you have Iran, when you have Iraq under Maliki, when you have Shi'i militias coming from Pakistan, coming from Afghanistan, fighting, and from Iraq, fighting with the regime, and from Lebanon, definitely Hezbollah, fighting with the regime against the revolution, then definitely it will become an issue of Sunni Shi'is. And there are other jihadists, quote-unquote groups, Sunnis groups, who are going to Syria to fight under the name of the Sunni Islam. But it didn't start as such. What happened is, when you see the blood, when you see that amount of blood that being shed, when you see the amount of destruction, people tend to identify with their identities and their affiliations. That's what's happening in Syria today. But we shouldn't accept that it's a Sunni Shi'i thing, because that's how they're trying to present it. And I will tell you, even Saudi Arabia, that is a Sunni country, is investing in that. Why? Because for them, it is good, again, to suffocate this wind of change, to make sure that the fight takes somewhere else, which is in Syria, instead of the winds of change coming to Saudi Arabia. So they're happy with it. They're all investing in Syria, investing where Syria became the battleground for regional and international conflicts. Now, Russia, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Israel is the beneficiary. It's watching, sitting there, watching, because it doesn't want to solve the Palestinian issue. So we have to keep this in mind. It's not a Sunni Shi'i, it is the people revolting against a brutal regime. People who don't care where they come from or what religion they belong to, but who want to live in freedom. And I just want to mention another point, going back to the first question. I want to just give you an example how these regimes corrupted and bankrupted the Arab people. Just take a look at the situation in Egypt today, after the coup. How they manufactured problems to the elected president, Mohamed Morsi, who was disposed by the regime, by the army. Look at those who are standing with the army today, carrying the boots of the army, kissing it, putting it on top of their heads, and declaring that they accept the subjugation to the army. That's how they corrupted, that's how they bankrupted the Arab people. They got us to a point where if you choose reform, then you are calling chaos. You are inviting chaos. But if you choose stability under tyrantship, or if you choose tyranny, then you will maintain stability. So it is either or. That's what we're presented with. It is the same thing that the Syrian people are presented with. Accept the boots, of Bashar al-Assad. Accept that he massacres some of you, not all of you. That he destroys some of your houses, not of all of your houses. That he takes away your future from you, but not your lives. Accept that, or I'll take your lives and I will destroy everything, and I'll make sure that you never live free and in dignity. So that's what we're presented with. So let's keep this in mind. It's not a struggle or a war between the Islamists and the regimes. It is a struggle over freedom. Whether we want to live free, vote in the Islamists and vote them out, or to have a regime where you cannot vote them in and vote them out. You have to keep them there because you have no other option, and you don't have the alternative. And it's not up to you and up to me. It is up to them. They rule by the will of the so-called people, which does not even exist. But we are made to believe or forced to believe that it exists. So we have to keep this in mind.
Okay, questions? I'll stand up, speak very loudly, tell us who you are very quickly, and address. Yeah.
My name is Johnny Hamill, and I happen to be a 60-year-old student in Dr. Matthews' class, ethics. And early on, you indicated that, first of all, Jordan is just adjacent to Israel. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, just to
And
see
then
Israel as
Syria.
Yeah.
Okay, you appear to have a passion, a great emotional investment in the situation there. What would you have people, individuals, or other countries to do to aid and assist Syria at this time?
Unfortunately, there is not much to be done by a country like Jordan. It is the Saudis who can really change the dynamics on the ground. And the Saudis cannot make a decision without having a green light from the United States. It is as simple as that. The Saudis want to provide these missile launchers for anti-craft missiles because that will change the dynamics on the ground. But the United States is saying no, and there is a US veto. So the Saudis couldn't do anything. The Jordanians cannot do anything. If the Saudis cannot do anything, the Jordanian cannot do anything. So unfortunately, it is left to the people in Syria to try to change their situation. But they're, being out-armed, and now I think they're losing to the regime. It's very obvious that they're losing. At one point, they controlled over 60% of the Syrian territory. Now that territory is shrinking because they're not receiving the arms to fight the regime or to fight back the regime. And when the United States send them weapons, they send them light weapons, conditioned. They make sure that it goes to certain hands, certain groups within the opposition, and they say we provide you with training. How many people are being trained a month? 600 people. 600 people will not change the situation on the ground. So I can't see Jordan or any other Arab state doing anything or able to do anything unless we have a change in the policy here in the United States. And if you remember, President Obama set a red line that if the Syrian regime will use chemical weapons against its own people, then the United States will get involved and will attack Syria. That happened in August last year. What did our president do? He threatened to attack Syria, and we were told it's imminent. And then President Obama set a precedent in the United States by seeking permission from Congress to attack Syria. This is not a declaration of war. No other US president before Obama asked for a permission to have a so-called surgical operation or a surgical attack. But it was the president here who threw it in the lap of the Congress. Definitely the Democrats weren't happy because he sent it back to them. He's not running for re-elections, they're running for re-elections. The Republicans who are pro-military, wars, they said, no, we cannot accept it because again, the elections are coming soon. The American people don't want to see the United States engaged in another war. And the regime ended up surviving because of that. Now, yes, there was a settlement that he will surrender his chemical weapons. So now it became about the safety, not of the Syrian people. As long as you bomb the Syrian people with barrels, as long as you bomb the Syrian people with missiles and the artillery shell, as long as you slaughter them, massacre them, rape their women, it is fine. As long as you commit crimes against the humanity in Syria by not using the chemical weapons, it's okay. But if you use the chemical weapons because it might threaten Israel, that's not okay. So unfortunately, I think we here in the United States, we lost, morally on the world stage when it came to the situation in Syria. So don't worry about Jordan because they can't do anything. Jordan cannot even defend itself.
Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. And I thank the panel for everything that they brought here as far as information. I think the two doctors was very informative. To my good brother right over here, he was talking about when you go to Juma sometimes and you see imam with maybe not beard or whatever the situation may be. I think, and this is just me thinking, I think long as we sometimes ask Allah for guidance and that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the mustaqim, to give us the rope to grab out and reach, and that we don't have veil over our eyes, I think, alhamdulillah. But my main question was, as I keep looking at this right here, where it says second annual Malcolm X Justice and Peace Lecture Series, and I think about revolution, I also think about change, and I think about, well, basically those two. And I think Malcolm went through different stages in his life. For one, he was Malcolm Little at first, and that was a transformation that he made from there to Malcolm X. But after he went from Malcolm X, he also made another change, another transformation into El-Hajj Malik El-Sabas. And as I keep looking at this right here, and it says Malcolm X, well, when he was in the Malcolm X mentality, it was different than when he was in the El-Hajj Malik El-Sabas mentality. And I was just thinking that if Malcolm was alive, I really think instead of something right here saying Malcolm X, I think he would more so prefer, inshallah, that you say El-Hajj Malik El-Sabas, because that's who he was. It was a change in his mind as well as in his heart, and especially for the deen. Thank you.
Did you understand the question?
No, it's the organizers. It's a very famous name. You shouldn't have a problem with pronouncing it. It became more famous than George and Peter and.
Some people are blocking this. My question is really about the West involvement as far as the conflict that's going on in Syria. Now, I know it's not a religious war, but the one thing that the United States does not get involved in is religious war. It's putting boots on the ground in Syria will not only cause a conflict in that region, but worldwide. For the mere reason is the misconception that it is a religious war. And that's the one thing we don't touch that. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame that the atrocities that have happened in Syria is going on. But it's the truth, man. I mean, even when you take the Republicans, yeah, normally they like war. But if there's no interest, if we go there and there's no oil, if there's no gold, if there's no diamonds, what are we going there for? It's a shame that we have to accept this reality, but it's so true, man. I mean, you might as well say it would be World War III if we put boots to the ground in Syria, and it's a shame that those people have to go through that.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. And honestly, I do want to see American boots in Syria because I'll treat that as an occupation. As we occupied Iraq, no one would accept even the Syrian people to be occupied. So we're in agreement. The issue is not to send American troops to Syria. The issue is for the United States, as the sole superpower today, though some are arguing that the US is retreating now, okay? That's another subject. But it's America who can allow the opposition to be armed. It is the United States that is objecting to arming the opposition. So for the United States just to lift this ban, to allow the people to defend themselves, that's all what the Syrian people are asking for. It's not because they want America to interfere, but that's a reality. Without America, Saudi Arabia, even Turkey, no other Arab country can arm I would call them the freedom fighters in Syria. No one can arm them. So for the US not to intervene, and for the US not to allow the Syrians to defend themselves, that's the problem that we have with our foreign policy. Just allow the people to defend themselves. But what we're getting from the Obama administration is that it is okay for the regime to continue its massacres as long as you give me your chemical weapons, which is a strategical weapon that they have as a deterrence against Israel. So it wasn't supposed and meant to be used against its people. But other conventional weapons you can continue to kill, and for Russia and Iran, they can continue to arm the Syrian regime. And for Hezbollah, imagine that Hezbollah now is claiming that it is engaged on war and terrorism. They're using the same American terminology. We're fighting terrorism in Syria. And our administration seems to be happy with it. As long as you're not fighting Israel, as long as you're killing others in the name of Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, it is okay. But as long as you're getting armed from Iran, it's fine with us because we're trying to reach an agreement with Iran, a grand bargaining maybe. That's okay. But for the Syrian people to defend themselves, it's not okay. And then we condemn the Syrian people if they criticize the United States. And then we want to, and this is not an endorsement, but I don't think this is in the best interest of the United States. It is not in the best interest of our national security when one segment of people feel that they're being discriminated against by our foreign policy, because unfortunately that is the perception in the Arab world now. The United States is siding with the Shia sect against the Sunni sect, which is the overwhelming majority of Muslims. Now, I'm not saying this is right, I'm not saying also that it's not. But I'm saying for the perception of the United States that it is engaged in a religious war because it's siding or neglecting the fact that there are people who are being killed because of the inability of the United States or unwillingness of the United States to allow them to defend themselves. So eventually we're going back to square one. It could be interpreted as a religious war by the United States, which I don't agree with. But I don't think that our policy here is being rightly guided. And I understand where President Obama is coming from. He doesn't want to be seen as a war president. But I can't see him also a peace president. Because he received that Nobel Prize for doing nothing, for saying everything and doing nothing. So there has to be some substantiation here why he got that Nobel Prize. Either he brings the conflict into an end, to rest, or he let people defend themselves. That's as simple as it's as simple as that. Well, he chose to become a U.S. president. Well, no one asked him to run. Thank you.
This may sound a little repetitive. This may sound a little repetitive, but I wanted to ask, given the history of U.S. intervention around the world, does it run a risk with U.S. intervention that you end up replacing one regime with another, that maybe replacing the pro-Russian
first question is yes. Just look at the situation in Egypt today. If anyone tells you that the US has nothing to do with the coup, they're not telling you the truth. Just read the coverage that was in the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, that clearly confirmed that the US ambassador in Egypt was part of the coup, because it went to the President Morsi, and told him, just surrender your authority, delegate it to Baradei, and just leave, become a symbolic president for 6 months, and then they will have another elections and just go away. It didn't work. The army outmaneuvered the United States. They both agreed that they want to change the situation in Egypt, but the Americans wanted Baradei to become the president, but the army wanted to continue its control over Egypt. So we changed the situation in Egypt from a regime that came through the ballot box, whether you agree with it or not, to a regime that is closer to the United States again. So this could happen in Syria too. This could happen in Syria. I'm not saying that it wouldn't. It might. But the problem is, why does it have to be that way? Why are we bragging about our values? Why are we bragging about human rights? Why are we bragging about God gift to humanity, not American gift to humanity? Why are we bragging about it? Let's just say that either we are an imperial power, another imperial power, or we are the exceptional country that we all aspire here in the United States, that America is exceptional. That's what we want for America to be. So either we say it as it is, or we live by our words. That's the problem that we have in Syria. And again, I would say no one is asking America to intervene. Just allow the people to defend themselves, because it is because of our administration the Syrian freedom fighters cannot defend themselves and defend their people and defend their cause. It's not because America is not arming them. Just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Allow people to defend themselves. That's all what we're asking for. In America, we had a civil war. Well, now, I don't want to be a revisionist, but at the time of the Civil War, I don't think anyone in his right mind would have believed that America will become stronger after a civil war. Okay, but look at the situation today. We are praising President Lincoln because he stood his ground, he kept America intact, and he allowed us to have the United States that we have today. So in Syria, we could have the same example. Just allow the people to defend themselves, to stand to what they believe in. Now, when it comes to the media coverage, when the Arab Revolution started, the American media was giving a good percentage of its coverage to the revolutions. Now it changed. Now they're more busy with this missing flight, Malaysian missing flight. They're more busy with internal issues here in the United States, and that is understandable. Unfortunately, I think this is especially neglecting the situation in Syria today, that left the burden from the president's shoulders and the administration's shoulder, because the president doesn't feel that he's obligated or compelled to intervene in Syria, or to do something about the situation in Syria, because the American people are not seeing what is taking place in Syria. If you tell people here that 3.5 million people or 3 million people are refugees now in Syria, and 6 million are displaced within their own country, you're talking about 9 million people out of 22 million people who are living in a total destruction. But the American people are not seeing it. 3.5 million houses being destroyed, 70% of the country being destroyed. And then all what we worry about, that the jihadists don't fight and don't have a safe haven in Syria. Well, excuse me, they will have a safe haven in Syria. They will have a safe haven in Syria. And they will regroup and reorganize, and they will get ready for another conflict maybe in the future, because you're allowing it to happen. Again, I'm not asking that the US goes there. I'm asking just allow the people to defend themselves in the name of Syria, not in the name of a so-called jihadist. And when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli issue, I don't think it's even in the media. I mean, it's very slim, the coverage when it comes to the situation there. You will find it in the printed media more than in TV. And again, because the American people are not really very interested when it comes to foreign policy. That's one of the things that we know. They're not very interested when it comes to the foreign policy. And just take the debate over the coverage of CNN now of the missing flight. Fox News is criticizing, or Bill O'Reilly is criticizing CNN for devoting too much attention to the missing flight. And according to him and according to other pundits, it should be more focused on internal issues. It is a debate that is taking place in the United States. I would love to see America more, American people more oriented when it comes to our foreign policy and to the issues abroad, because at the end of the day, they do affect us here. We all condemn 9/11. There were terrorist attacks, but they didn't happen in the vacuum. They were in the making. They were in the making. There were people, whether rightly or wrongly, upset with our foreign policy. Now, I'm not saying that, again, I'm not justifying it, but the American people knew nothing about it. It came like a flash, just suddenly happened. It didn't just suddenly happen. We have to be more aware of our foreign policy, because that affects our economy, affects our well-being, affects the safety of the United States, affects the the position of the United States worldwide and the standing of the United States worldwide. This shouldn't be left to so-called experts. It should be also checked by the will of the people. Do we want to, down the road go and invade another country under any pretext, like what we did in Iraq? In Iraq, it wasn't justifiable. In Syria, in Afghanistan, I understand it was, okay? But people didn't know about the situation in Iraq. Everybody thought that Saddam Hussein was part of the conspiracy of the 9/11 attacks. Well, we know now he wasn't. And I tell you that George Bush's administration knew that he wasn't, and they manipulated the facts. So this could happen again, because the people are not informed, and they think just because we live in this beautiful, vast country, rich country, that we don't need the rest of the world. No, we do still need the rest of the world. Just look at the situation in Ukraine now, and you will understand that we are living on, maybe the tokens of a new Cold War. Maybe not under the same, within the same dynamics, but again, this could exhaust the United States. Where are the American people from that? We have to have a public debate about these issues and the issues of the Middle East, and Palestine definitely is one of them.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers. Thank you all for coming. We have 3 more events for the Malcolm X lecture series. We have one at 1 o'clock on Egypt, one at 3 o'clock on Somalia, and one at 6 o'clock on where all of our panelists, including Dr. Osama and others, will be here. We'll have food this evening at 6 o'clock and talk about what it means to be a global thinker and liver. So come to as many as you can. Invite your friends. Thank you very much.